How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here. It's July 1st, 2025. So what does that mean? We're right around a calendar month away from the MLB trade deadline. And we all know the Mets need to make moves. That's why we broke down so many potential trade fits for this Mets team, either reportedly or at least could certainly be connected in the near future in our previous content that's dropped over the past couple days on the platform. So make sure to check it out on the fronts of guys like Severino, Lugo, Keller, Chapman, Robert, Mullins, Duran, and so many others for you guys. But today in our latest Big Mets Update segment, this is going to be a bit different. This is not as much breaking down the latest Mets land regarding the players, but rather the people that are actually helping dictate what's going on with this team, starting with our owner and Steve Cohen, as he finally has come out of the woodwork and has shared some opinions as to what is going on with the Mets as of late, his disgruntlement, to what degree, and ultimately, how is this team going to get fixed? How are they going to get remedied? What is Steve Cohen, the Mets leader in charge, have to say about that? We're going to share our opinions as to what he had to say, and from there, we're also going to hear from Eric Chavez, as Eric Chavez came out with an exclusive interview there with the New York Post that dropped this past day. You guys may have seen my segment there with the New York Post and their latest Straight Out of Flushing Mets podcast with Dexter Henry, their host. So make sure to check that out on their platform should you guys have interest on YouTube. But we're going to break down these remarks and ultimately what is next for this Mets team, and should changes be had internally speaking as well, because Eric Chavez does in fact go on to say his thoughts and opinions on the hot seat, basically, which has been the fans, including myself to a degree, sharing our respective opinions as to what we're not happy with Chavez currently, and ultimately what needs to be changed for this club going forward to get out of their current 13 losses and a 16-game stretch. Nothing short of an absolutely brutal stretch. What can this Mets team do? Let's break it down, everybody. So thank you guys kindly for hitting that like and subscribe button as you first chime in, letting me know all your initial reactions in the comments down below to the following topics that we have for each and every one of you today. And as always, shout out to our amazing sponsors at SeatGeek. Make sure to check them out for 10% off your next ticket purchase. I will be attending this Saturday's game, Subway Series Mets, and that will be against the Yankees. And SeatGeek can have you covered for those tickets as well, everybody, for 10% off. Utilize our promo code WARDY10, link down below. Thank you guys kindly for that, as well as shouting out our sponsor here at BetUS that has you covered on the sports betting front, everybody. Head over to betus.com.pa today, and please make sure you bet responsibly. That's the most important thing. But should you guys head over there, make sure you guys do so at betus.com.pa and utilize our promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube will get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever you guys want to bet on. And as you guys can see right here, the Mets somehow, some way, and I realize that this is cut off, so I apologize for that. Let me fix the graphic right here, right now, for each and every one of you. As you guys can see, the Mets are currently, believe it or not, the money line favorite. Yes, they're not the underdog here against the Milwaukee Brewers, even while the Brewers have been the hottest team in baseball the past month out of the National League, and the Mets have lost 13 of their past 16 games. Instead, the Mets are still a minus 165. So if you guys want to biasly bet, feel free to sprinkle some dollars. I'm going to be honest with you, just based on how things have not been faring too well lately, if I was going to splash on this game, I would probably favor the Brewers, just because the Mets need to actually prove to me that they're going to get back to their winning ways. I only have so much confidence heading into this series beginning tonight at the time of this video first dropping. But check them out, everybody, and thank you kindly for that. And as you guys can see, we got Uncle Steve talking right beside me. Unfortunately, he's not actually here to have a conversation, but that's okay. I know that Steve's got a lot more things to worry about, but he is still worried about his Mets, and understandably so, especially when you look at the Mets dropping 13 of their past 16 games that they had statistically their worst series, you could rightfully argue, in team history. The Mets have had never in their team history had a run differential of 26 in favor of the other club in a 3-game set, yet the Mets managed to do that, losing 3 straight games in Pittsburgh against the Pirates, who will be 20 games below 500 before we could even snap our fingers. But Steve Cohen finally broke his silence. He finally had something to say about this Mets team, and we were all waiting to hear from Steve, because usually when the Mets are doing things right, he's out either sharing tweets or sharing remarks in a presser among those lines, and when things aren't going right in Mets land, he too is very vocal, because he's the owner, he's a diehard fan, and he knows what it's like all of us Mets fans do, to feel frustrated about the ball club. But as you guys can see here, let me show you exactly what's happening here in Mets land, everybody. Before we get on to the Eric Chavez piece here in just a couple minutes, let's talk more on what Steve Cohen had to share, because as you guys can see, this initially dropped yesterday, this tweet, but the reason why I want to emphasize this in its own video, not our content yesterday, has everything to do with the fact that I got a lot to say about this comment, actually, that Steve Cohen first shared with us to all check out and evaluate for yourself. So right off the riff, everybody, what is my initial reaction to the following? Well, Steve Cohen did go on to state, I'm going to expand on this so that way you guys can see it in full. Tough stretch, no sugarcoating it. I didn't see this coming. I'm as frustrated as everybody else. We will get through this period. Our injured pitching will come back over the next few weeks. It is unlikely the team's hitting with runners in scoring position will continue this week pace. Keep the faith. And I can keep the faith all day long, Steve. We're Mets fans. We've been through far worse than this. Still 11 games above 500. It can be a lot worse. But at the same time, I think we need to make sure that we don't turn a blind eye to the clear glaring issues with this team, which is why I actually replied to Steve the following, as you guys can see here. While I see the optimism still in this current reign of fire surrounding the club, the runner scoring position woes have been a constant, as you know. Hard to envision this as something that'll significantly change when a half-season sample size has shown NYM as a bottom feeder in this category. Whether it's the group coming together or key trades made to spark the club, something has to give there. And then I went on to thank him for, again, continuing to be outspoken as an owner. That's why we love him so much, everybody. But now, guys, talking more here on Uncle Steve, what is the further reactions to this? Let me hear from you guys, especially guys, because I got to be completely honest with you. While I wholeheartedly understand where Steve's coming from, and I believe that we should be keeping the faith, we shouldn't stop keeping the faith just because of this losing skid. Well, the one bugaboo that I have with Steve's comments is the following. The idea that the runner in scoring position woes aren't going to last that much longer, in my opinion, is kind of silly when you consider the fact that, as I just relayed, we're going on a full half season worth of a sample size of the Mets being absolutely horrendous with runners in scoring position. Something needs to change to everybody, and you have to wonder what exactly is it going to? Because in case you guys don't understand just how bad the Mets have been over the stretch, including offensively, mind you, the Mets are entering this series against the Milwaukee Brewers tonight, having the second worst team batting average with runners in scoring position out of any eligible team in Major League Baseball. The only team that they are trailing right now is the Chicago White Sox. And I promise you, everybody, as much as this pains me to say, Mets fans, there is not a chance, and you know what, that the Mets go anywhere deep this year should this persist. And the problem is, we're 80+ games of the season, and it's been persisting since the first series there in Houston. Not a single thing has changed consistently on the Mets hitting philosophy when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position. They've had their splashes. They actually hit well with runners in scoring position when they split the series against the Braves over this past week, but with the exception that they really haven't had a whole lot to show. A bunch of solo home runs will only get you so far. It'll only get this team so far. And then you add in the fact that Steve is very confident in the Mets' abilities with their pitching staff to get right with Manaea, who, if you guys don't know, is going to be towing the rubber tonight for the Rummel ponies. So that's very encouraging news. We'll break down more on Manaea in a segment for you guys tomorrow to break down his results, how he fared. Same thing with Jesse Winker. We will have news on both of them for you guys tomorrow as they'll be back in action today. And that's awesome. I can't wait to see these guys back. But how much are these reinforcements in your in-house options from Manaea, Tyler McGill eventually at some point, because I haven't heard a lick about him since he went down on the injured list. And then there, what you see in Kodai Senga, hopefully back before the month of July and right around the trade deadline. While you have optimism and them getting back in this rotation being solid again, you have the concerns that should either the two not perform well, should other pieces in the rotation, say, God forbid, David Pearson really continues his downward stretch after giving up 5 earned runs over his past few starts. Let's just say, hypothetically, things don't go the way that the Mets planned. The problem that you now find yourself in, and is that you pretty much shot yourself in the foot. You could have been more proactive on making separate deals that you otherwise didn't do up until the deadline because you had faith in your in-house options, and now you're going to go into the trade deadline either hoping that you can make a big splash while paying a premium because you're going to have to go in a bidding war for teams, or you're going to be lackluster and have more of a trade deadline like last year that everybody and their mother, including your guy Wardy here, is not going to be okay with. Regardless of David Stearns being at the helm, Stearns can fool me once by having an underwhelming trade deadline in 2024 with Paul Blackburn there and everyone else that you acquired. Jesse Winker was a great acquisition offensively. I don't disagree with that at all, but that's only so much of a needle mover for you. And on the pitching end, we know that there was a whole lot of moving lateral at absolute best. Blackburn's been a complete bust. He is the Adrian Hauser 2.0 is the best way to explain him to Mets fans in simple terms. That is the another arm that is an innings eater, but hasn't provided any quality of innings, hasn't eaten them well, as a guy that's been throwing the fire in various situations and hasn't known how to handle it since coming back from that spinal fluid leak that derailed his season last year. Bullpen-wise, the Mets didn't do enough at the deadline last year either. So when we talk about having faith, keeping the faith in this team, I can keep the faith plenty. but I can also be a realist at the same time. And that is something that I feel at times that can be a loss for a Mets team and a front office in the course of a 162, when you have to make sure that you guys are obviously churning out the best results on a daily basis. You can get lost in the fact that in a snap of a finger, you're already halfway into the season. And that in itself is a major problem for this New York Metropolitan team. That is exactly why when you look at this team and their woes, not only on the offensive end, but the pitching end has been even more horrendous, everybody. To share context on how bad the Mets pitching has been over the stretch, just let me enlighten you guys a little bit. And this is why the Mets not only need to make external moves, both offensively to a degree, to either add another outfielder, potentially an infielder as well, because we know that between the Mauricios, the Beattys, the Acuñas of the world, there's a great reality the Mets may trade at least one of those by the deadline for something more of certainty, which would be pitching for this ball club, right? So when you look at the pitching staff, just how concerning is it? Because we know the runner and scoring position woes, in my opinion, aren't just going to drastically change until something is had there by either someone stepping up more in the 5 through 9 and the heart of the meat of their order there, one looking at the younger players, or adding external bats that can help be a spark, the way that we've seen Jesse Winker was a nice addition last year, the same way that if we go all the way back to 2015, Yoenis Cespedes completely transformed that Mets offense. I'm not saying that they got to go the lengths to make a move that's significant, but they got to do something here. And the pitching has just as much been a liability, if not worse, than the runner and scoring position woes as of late, everybody. Because mind you, through 69 games and June 12th so far this season, the Mets had a MLB best 2.79 ERA. And since then, everybody, we have seen this Mets team fall off a cliff on the pitching end. Since June 13th, when all these injuries happened, Kodai Senga and others, they now have themselves a 6.41 ERA, far and away the worst in all Major League Baseball by quite a good margin. The Twins are second at 5.86. Then you look at everybody, the starters mark was the worst, MLB worst, at 6.22, and the bullpen, everybody, at 6.59. So it's absolutely batting practice that's happening. And you want to know how this becomes batting practice? When you don't have immediate reinforcements for your injury woes, and you're doing this constant carousel of just throwing up guys to then spit them back out 24 hours after the fact, and their bullpen. Over the past 17 games, the Mets have utilized a whopping 16 relievers. That, too, needs to change, everybody. So if you're wondering how bad have things been collectively for this team, it has been in unison on various fronts. It's not just on the bullpen. It's not just on the rotation. It's not just on the offense. It is a true collective effort for what has been a dumpster fire of a ball club the past 2+ weeks of baseball. And the problem is, and as Steve Cohen knows it very well, we know this team is far greater than what they're currently showing. We know that they're supposed to be performing much better than what they're currently doing. But the problem is how much confidence do we have to think that this team is going to dig deep and get out of not only their rut currently, but to get farther than what they otherwise have been this season, which is 21 games above 500 2+ weeks ago, while they still have their glaring issues. Because this is what your guy Wardy has been calling out since the start. If you guys follow our content, if you follow our post-game content, among other things, and you know very, very well just what the woes have been like with the Mets this season. And since the start of the season, they have not had a true situational hitting setup at all. They have not done well when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position. They have been a bottom feeder all season long. And right now, if you look throughout all their numbers right now, when it comes to their hitting, over since April 13th as well, the Mets have been a bottom feeder. They have been the bottom 6 teams in baseball offensively. That's where the Mets have been over the past 2.5 weeks. But runners in scoring position wise, they've been horrendous all season long there. And you want to know what makes it even worse is that even when a guy like Juan Soto has the best calendar month in Mets team history, he still isn't even batting higher than like a $159 or so with runners in scoring position this year. He has a sub 600 OPS, but he has been horrendous when it comes to actually having guys on, as has been the case for pretty much every other batter and their mother outside of the following, everybody. Pete Alonso's batting 330 plus with a really strong OPS. Brett Beatty has surprisingly really clutched up and is hitting right around 280 with runners in scoring position as limited sample size. The same thing can be said with Luis Torrens, even though the power has completely fallen off the past month and a half plus, everybody. Outside of that, the Mets are not having consistency. Guys like Francisco Lindor have not clutched up at all with runners in scoring position. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this, just in case any of you guys are wondering, Wardy, what are you yapping about? Take a look at it with me, everybody. You think I'm lying? Look at these numbers for yourself. I know they might be hard to see, but don't worry. I will squint and look at them for you. Jeff McNeil, 209 batting average, 754 OPS. Luis Torrens, 281 average, 753 OPS. Jesse Winker, when he was here, 222 average, 722 OPS. Tyrone Taylor, 265 average, 701 OPS. Brandon Nimmo, 241 average, 679 OPS. Starling Marte, 226 average, 653 OPS. Juan Soto, 147 average, 596 OPS. OPS. Horrendous. Vientos, 132 average, 571 OPS. Horrendous. Lindor, 179 average, 566 OPS. Horrendous. And I love our captain, but that can be true at the same time. Lindor can be amazing while not being as clutch as we otherwise need him to be so far this season. Then it goes on from there with the guys I've been having very limited sample sizes, but Brett Beatty and Pete Alonso have been at the tippity top of that list, which is impressive to see for them, but for everybody else, this is a major problem, everybody. And how can this Mets hitting philosophy, how can they find themselves somehow, some way to get themselves right? Well, in order for the Mets to get right, everybody, that has a lot to do with who's leading the charge on the offensive end. And look no further than Eric Chavez and Mr. Jimmy Barnes. Now let's see all the key remarks that Eric Chavez had to share with the media this past day and how we feel about it as fans, and ultimately what is next now for this New York Metropolitan Club. But before we get to Eric Chavez, everybody, we are going to just take a quick break, not for the sake of actually doing an ad read. This time it's going to be a little bit different. Instead, this time, everybody, I'm going to be showing you what we have upcoming, especially a month from now, August 1st, the first ever official Wardy Day that I think you guys are going to want to hear. So listen up real quick, and then we'll go back to breaking down Chavez. It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we are at gorgeous Citi Field, and folks, you can get the ultimate, the prime experience with your guy Wardy at our first ever official Wardy Day. August 1st, Mets, San Francisco Giants there for the evening game. The day after the MLB trade deadline, you, your friends, your loved ones, select Mets fans will get the ultimate experience with your guy Wardy. Not only are we going to hang out at the ball game together, but folks, look at the seating. We're going to be live here in the left field lounge. You guys will be able to chop it up with your guy Wardy. We're going to be debating as to who's the best pitcher of the rotation outside of Kodai Senga. We're going to be talking about who's the next best prospect to get called up. How do we feel about the trade deadline acquisitions? And guys, as you get back up here then, we are going to be giving you a $18 drink voucher, and with that drink voucher, you guys are going to be able to hit up the bars that we have right outside of here. So easy, so accessible. Again, prime seating, a truly fantastic experience. Our first ever Wardy Day here at Citi Field, guys, where you will get a chance to hang out with your guy Wardy. And the best part too, not only is it this amazing lounge in left field that you guys will hang out with me, but we're going to be on the field, pre-game access there for a group photo op. So I hope to see you, all you amazing Mets fans there. Click the link if you guys haven't already there to check out our available tickets, and let's go Mets. And not only are we going to be sitting here throughout the course of the ball game, you guys can also check out these seats that we have access to all here in the bar area here, right at the Milagro, where you guys can utilize your $18 drink voucher. Again, this is going to be at Wardy Day, August 1st, 2025. Oh wait, yeah, almost forgot. It's also fireworks night. Bang! Hope to see you guys there. Awesome. Thank you guys for checking that out. And again, if you guys want to hang out with your guy Wardy at Wardy Day, tickets down below to check out today. We still have some available, and we will be there August 1st. Going to have an absolute blast. Hopefully, the Mets are playing far greater baseball than they are a month from that point, because right now, it's not looking so hot, I got to be honest with you. But speaking of this Mets hitting philosophy, none other than Eric Chavez felt the need to have himself a nice little one-on-one there with the media yesterday. So let's see what Eric Chavez had to say when speaking to the New York Post. And there are a couple quotes in particular that I want to highlight for you all, but I'm going to first start with the one that I didn't put up in a graphic just because of an honest accident, and it's the following. In response to the Mets' current hitting woes, this is what Eric Chavez has to say, and I quote, and you guys can check this article out. I will have it linked down below in the description should you guys have interest. It just needs to get better, Chavez told the Post, and I quote, you kind of think there's too many good hitters and players for us to be underperforming as a group. I do think that, Chavez, all the more reason why we're frustrated. But it's like we're halfway through the season, and you would say, oh, it's going to turn around, and then you say you think it's going to turn around, but at some point, you just don't want to ever overreact and go too hard to make drastic changes. Well, here's the thing. When you drop 13 of 16 games, some type of change needs to be had. That's inexcusable, especially to lose in the fashion, the way that the Mets did in Pittsburgh. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That can never be justified. I don't care how many games you are above 500. That just is not okay. You just don't want to overreact there. And then he says, working with David Stearns, the one thing he has shown me is to have patience. I don't have it, says Chavez. I am more of an overreactor where I want things hammered down. But as far as addressing it, the players, they know that they're better than what this current group is showing. Well, here's my initial reaction to that. So Eric Chavez is an overreactor. So what does that mean? What is an Eric Chavez overreaction as a Mets hitting coach? Is an Eric Chavez overreaction telling Francisco Alvarez that he needs to completely deviate away from his hitting philosophy after hitting over 20 home runs as a rookie in 2021? 2021. I mean, that's something that comes to mind right away, right? Or you think about the fact that you had even last year, Francisco Lindor is pretty much calling out Chavez, not in a rude way, but just calling him out, basically being like, you know, you need to do more here than what we're currently getting. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's kind of your role? And Chavez has since evaluated himself. Barnes has done the same. But the fact that we're hearing this nonsense and the fact that a piece like this comes out through the post is just further of a headache, if you ask me as a fan, because why can't there just be somebody to be had here, right? And again, this is not a personal slight at all on Chavez. I have no ill will against the guy. He was a great player. I love the hire when the Mets first brought him in, and I don't think he's absolutely terrible, but you have to pinpoint something somewhere at some point. You can only go so long by having your hands tied behind your back and expecting yourself to get out of it. Something needs to change. And who is going to be the person to cut that rope and to get you free? I don't know if it's going to be a coaching change, which the Mets are not immediately going to do, because as you guys can see here from these key quotes, there are some further remarks to share. Chavez said he isn't concerned about the possibility of him that he will lose a job, and says he has received positive reinforcement from Stearns and his top lieutenant, Eduardo Brazula. And I quote, They are always encouraging, always positive, Chavez said. They say it's going to change and to stay with it. You guys are working hard. I do appreciate that from them, but I just like to win. I know I am in the hitting department, but I just consider myself a baseball guy. I love all aspects, but I also know we need to get better offensively. That's for me and Jeremy to figure out from our end. You're darn right. It's your job to figure out. You're on salary. You're on payroll to be what is otherwise what's been a horrendous approach of hitting philosophy for this Mets team all season long. Solo bombs and not hitting with runners to scoring position will not get this team far come postseason play. But you guys know that. Surely Eric Chavez does, right? Individually, some of them are doing some pretty good stuff, but just as a group, we kind of underperform. Kind of? Okay, we'll go with that wordplay. Pete is a huge part of what we do. What he hits, we win. It's pretty simple. But the rest of us have to. You don't have to single out a certain group, but Jeremy and I and the staff have to figure out, is there something from our end that we can change or improve? Considering the fact that it feels like that this has been a constant the past year and a half, yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say that you do have something that you need to change and improve. And if you can't improve that, it's important for David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza to be cognizant of that and bear that in mind when they evaluate the future of the organization and their coaching staff. That's my opinion. Currently, Wardy talking here. Now back to Chavez's quote. That's a hard part about this, going home and saying, what can we do to change things without drastically changing? It's hard because hitting is very hard, where you look across the league where offense is historically low, but then it's like, okay, we have really good players here. This team is built to beat good pitching. It's just a matter of being consistent. And I 100% agree with everything you just said there, Eric. But the problem that I have, and a problem that a lot of Mets fans have right now, is that you are right in the heart of where this needs to be changed. Yet you're telling me that you have to go out of your way when speaking of the post to say, no, we have to evaluate. We have to figure this out. This is no different than what we heard last year when he had this quote with Francisco Lindor. Literally along the lines of, okay, I need to change. I need to reevaluate, and that's fine. And I know Chavez has been diligent. I know Barnes has been diligent. These guys are not doing it for a lack of effort, but just because they're not doing it for a lack of effort doesn't change the fact that maybe it just isn't working. Has that hit the Mets yet? Has it been a consideration for this team? Even when they had their success last season, they were still significantly in gaps on where they were getting their offensive production, right? And they were also getting guys that were exceeding expectation when evaluating pitching that didn't really know how to pitch to him, i.e. Mark Vientos last season. So when you look at everything that has happened with this team going back from the start of 2024 to now, a constant has been the lack of proper hitting approach with runners in scoring position. Why should we believe now that over 80 plus games in the season that this is going to turn its head, that this is going to change? We're going to get turning of the tide here with in-house options. Miss me with that nonsense. Something needs to change there in my respective opinion. I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. Chavez knows something needs to change, but here's the thing, Eric. What is it going to be? Who is going to be the person to go out and do it? That is why we are intentionally calling for his head to be axed off, that being with him being parted with by this Mets team, not just because of Chavez and everything he brings, but rather what he doesn't brain, what he isn't braining, and what a potential different voice could do to that locker room. Now, obviously, the Mets are not going to be drastic enough to make that change. However, they are dragging their feet heading into the All-Star break, and they continue this piss-poor performance, including a big series starting tonight against the Brewers, and then he got the Subway Series over the weekend. Have you mean to tell me that the Mets play below 500 ball for the next 2 weeks leading up to the All-Star break, and there is not something done about the hitting philosophy of this team? I'm going to not only be obnoxious as a fan, but I'm going to let you guys all know very well how I feel about that and what is wrong with this team and why we have to start questioning the decision making to a degree by Stearns. And I don't want to get there, but I know that we have gone there to a degree because Steven Stearns is the exact reason why the Mets utilize 16 relievers in a 17-day span. That's because of the lack of consistency. That's because of the lack of reliability we have in the pen. I'm all for having depth. I'm all for having quantity. That is awesome. But when your quantity is starting to be put in roles that it needs to be quality and you're getting no help on the offensive or starter end, something has to give. And I unfortunately don't have the immediate remedy or answer for each and every one of you Mets fans, but that's why I want to hear from you guys down below. How do you feel about Eric Chavez's comments as well as Steve Cohen? And what do you think is next for this Mets team? Because what I think next is completely indicative on how this team performs over the next 7 to 14 days. What happens then will completely dictate what they do. Should they call up a top pitching prospect over Blade Tidwell, in my opinion? Yes. Should them, and the reason why they should is because why not give a leash to one of these kids for more than one turn in the order potentially before the All-Star break? Before the trade deadline that's a month away. Even with Sean Manaea looking like he's potentially, not even a week away or so, which is very positive to see. I love that for Manaea, the Simone Southpaw, as long as there's no setbacks. But even with bringing Sean Manaea back, there's still so much more that needs to be had with this team that isn't being figured out right now. And the Mets were 21 games above 500 2+ weeks ago. They're 11 games above 500. There's a great reality that this is not going to get just ugly, but it could get unbelievably ugly over the next 7 to 14 days. What are the Mets going to do to change the tide, to rewrite the script here? That's a great question that we all want to find answers to, while Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes are continuing to try to figure them out themselves. I'll let you guys interpret that and take that however which way you want to feel as a fan. Does it instill confidence in you that you're having your Mets hitting coach go out of his way to pretty much reaffirm again that we're struggling, we're trying to figure this out, and they haven't done it yet? Not necessarily something that I want to hear from my hitting coach, but I'm curious how you guys feel about that, as well as Steve Cohen's remarks and his uber confidence in the Mets getting this figured out internally with the runner in scoring position woes, unless what he was alluding to was knowing that the Mets have more moves to come via trade, and that's why he thinks that things will balance out. We'll see what happens, everybody. We'll let time do the talking. But until then, that'll do it for our latest Big Mets Update segment. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this segment. If you did, let us know all your initial reactions and thoughts in the comments down below. And be on the lookout, as we're going to have more Mets content dropping after the conclusion of every single game between the Mets and the Brewers this week. Same thing with the Subway Series, obviously. And we will have a big watch party this Thursday. Yours truly, Draft Neck Mark, Mike from Stark Raving Sports, and potentially one other special guest. It'll be live here on YouTube and in the Playback.tv app, which is linked down below for you guys to check out that room. Thursday's game, Jose Quintana, David Pearson, Tony the Rubber, the battle of Southpaws. Southpaw, one that should be here, and the other that should hopefully get back on track after playing really, really poorly his past 2 starts, that being in Peterson. Thank you guys again for watching. Until then, have a great one, folks. Let's go Mets. Peace out.